It's Kelly and Bob, and we're back on Time for Forgiveness. If you've been with us before, we love you're back. Thank you for sharing time with us. And if you're new to our family, we welcome you. Please share this this conversation with everybody you care about and love, because it's going to impact anybody that sees it. We've got, again, bringing back Joshua Broome to Time for Forgiveness. Joshua, great to have you back.
So glad to be here.
Okay, if you missed episode 1 with Joshua, go back and watch it, because you need the context to understand where the conversation is going to go here now. So Joshua, we're going to pick up this story. You've had your first interview into the adult film world.
Yeah.
And you're kind of seeing the glitz and glitter of it. It's appealing at some level, even though subconsciously you know probably it's not the right decision.
Right.
But the conscious mind's taking over here and going, hey, but you can get this, this, and this.
Sure.
And then I know you kind of want to go into, you've accepted an opportunity. You're in your first film.
Yeah.
Take it from there.
Yeah. So, I mean, they set that up for you. They say, hey, again, I just want to paint a picture of how coercive the industry is, and it's very intentional.
Yeah.
So the set up the first film for me. It's like, hey, you got to get a full panel STD test and AIDS test, and that's kind of like your work permit. So you got to have, it got to be redone every 27 days. So it's like, got to go get this test. Go get the test comes back, and then it's like, all right, I set up a shoot for you, and we're gonna pick you up. I'm like, oh, I can get there. No, we'll pick you up. We'll pick you up, in a town car, take great good care of you. So you get picked up. I don't know where I'm going. So I'm being picked up. I'm going to be taken somewhere to film, a sex scene that I'm being paid for. I'm in a town car. I don't know the address where I'm going. I know it's just somewhere in Encino. And I get there, and I walk in, and I'm handed a piece of paper, and it's like, this is how you get paid. Just sign here. Sign 3 signatures. I didn't just sign, a W-4. What I had signed is you're signing away all rights to any imagery, video, or audio. And the third signature is we reserve the rights to, to break up and to sell as many third parties as possible. Mm-hmm. So for an indefinite amount of time.
So did you know what you were signing at the time, or you just signed it?
No, this is how you get paid.
Yeah.
Sign here.
Okay.
Literally,
So
it's highlighted.
Okay.
Sign where it's highlighted, aka don't read it.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Just sign it. Sign. And then I'm like, because I'm kind of freaked out.
Yeah.
And I walk in, and I'm expecting to get a little camcorder and go into a room with a pretty girl. I walk in, there's a makeup area, and there's multiple girls in makeup chairs. There's catering, there's this massive production.
It looks like a legit movie set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is strangely familiar,
Right.
And then as I'm walking towards the end, a production assistant comes up to me. He's like, hey, I understand this is your first time. Here's a Viagra. It's in your hand. It's yours. If you've never used it before, I'd bite it in half. Up to you. But we're going to need you in 30 minutes. And I'm just like...
So that was...
But you don't even, I'm sorry, but you don't even know what you're doing yet. I mean,
No clue.
You know there's sex involved, obviously,
Yeah,
but...
no clue.
It's not like they gave you a script, and a line, it's just like...
No, not like this isn't... And I haven't even met or seen the girl. The only thing I've seen is her IDs and her STD test and her AIDS test. Okay, the name and the picture on the ID matches the test. Okay, I have to sign that I saw that. That was my only interaction with the girl. And then, I got the pill, and I got, this guy, he told me he needs me in 30 minutes. I go to the bathroom. I'm like, trying to give myself a pep talk in the bathroom. And then I begin to think, I'm like, this is a bad idea. And then I begin to think, what if I wanted to leave? What do I do? I don't even know where I'm at.
But those
so that's
thoughts
all
are going through your
intentional,
mind,
right?
though.
100% intentional. Because for me to leave, it's almost like I would have to be a kid at a sleepover that I didn't want to be at. I'm like, hey, I changed my mind. Will you come and pick me up?
Right.
That's what I would have to do. So I'd have to call that agent and saying, hey, I changed my mind. Would you come pick me up? So they're using the shame that you knew you would feel against you.
Yeah.
because you would have to make that call.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And this is like pre-Uber. There's no like.
It's not like you're gonna
I couldn't even call a
just
cab
walk out in
because-
the corner and put your thumb
Yeah,
up.
I mean, I'm in the middle of a residential area, like at a studio, and I'm like, well, I guess there's nothing left to do but to do it. So I just, took the whole pill, swallowed a water, and walked out. And then there was, multiple people around a girl that was laying on this bed, and there was like Kino flow. There was like the big lights like all around her, and then just like waved me in that direction. And it was awkward and weird. And the director told me exactly what to do. And there was a camera A, camera B. There was a BTS camera. There was a boom mic like right over my head. There was a C light being held right underneath me. And
So nowhere to hide.
nowhere to hide. And like it's like there's a level of like feeling exposed, and it was beyond that.
Oh, it had to be.
It's like
Yeah.
the dream that most people have had, where like you're in school naked or whatever, you're in a public space naked. It's beyond that. And
Yeah, because now you're expected to perform.
yeah,
Right.
and
I mean,
then-
it's like,
yeah.
it's,
So,
but
yeah.
you don't even know what that means really, because you've never done it before.
Yeah,
That's-
So you don't know what their expectations are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, and then it happens. I do the scene, and it's over, and then it was just so strange, like where like you're not even looking at the girl. Like this is like back in the day. Like these are like big, like on the shoulder cameras, like cameras that you would see like Eyewitness News like using.
Right.
And so like there's a camera guy like with a camera like over my shoulder, and like any interaction that you would see if you watch that film where the girl was looking at me, the girl's not actually looking at me. She's looking at the camera. So like the connection that you believe that we have on camera is fictitious to the extent where we never even looked at each other. So it's actually complete disconnection, because I'm not performing. I'm not like having sex for pleasure. I'm performing for a director and a camera, because everything needs to be seen. So at the end of it, it's like it's over, and then I go and try to take a shower, and then the car comes and picks me up, and I have my little check in my hand, and I remember like I still had like lubricant like in like the hair of my legs that I just like couldn't get off. I just felt so gross. And when I got home, I took another shower, and there's this movie, Redeeming Love. And in Redeeming Love, there's the two characters there's a love interest there, and she's working at a brothel, and she meets a guy who has a faith, and they connect, and he essentially rescues her from this life and wants to marry her, wants to have a life with her. And she was so unfamiliar with like they were kind of like on this like farmhouse, like out on a prairie, like no, just silence. And silence was so uncomfortable to her that she began to crave chaos. And she went back to the brothel, and she did something that she didn't want to do.
Because it was familiar.
It was because it was familiar. And once she did the thing that she didn't want to do, she felt the weight of it. And there's this scene where it always makes me emotional to think about it, but there's this scene where she's in a river, and she's got a rock, and she's trying to wash the filth off of her, but what she's trying to wash off isn't on her skin. And that's the shower that I was taking. It's like I couldn't get how I felt inside off of me. And I was like, I would never do that again. I would never do that again. That was disgusting. Only got paid like $500 for the first time. I was like, I would never do that again. And the problem is you don't count the cost of things sometimes, and it costs you more than you think. And what it cost me was a few days go by, they're pumping out these scenes, and they're getting them up quick, So all of a sudden, this was for one of the biggest websites, and it was on, this website within a week. And then I start getting phone calls from my fraternity brothers, and then people that I know. And
They just randomly saw you on there?
yeah.
So you
and-
had not discussed this,
no,
shared
didn't tell
this with anyone?
Didn't tell anybody.
Yeah.
That had to be a little shocking, didn't it? Like
Oh.
right away, all of a sudden,
Oh yeah. Well, and then the next 2 weeks of my life, it didn't crumble; it exploded. Where, being from a small town, it only takes one person to know one thing about your life for everyone to know everything about your life. So all of a sudden, someone told someone told someone told my
Spread like
uncle, and then my
wildfire.
uncle told my mom, and then I get a phone call from my mom, and in the South, it's like how much of your name is used is how much your trouble you're in. So I heard Joshua Luke Broome. I thought,
Yeah.
yeah,
bad news.
you're in the doghouse.
Yeah, and then she's like, "Did you do this? Like, did you do a porn film?" I was like, "I did, Mom. I did." And when the hurt in her voice, the disappointment,
Mhm.
and then when I hurt the only person that had never hurt me, I felt Satan whisper, "See, you're exactly who you thought you were. Like you didn't do a bad thing. Like you're bad. You see like why your dad didn't want you. It's because of who you are, and you just proved it. See, you're exactly who you thought you were."
So that was solidified again, and you accepted it probably at a deeper level. But as I'm thinking of your mom, she's saying that, she's hurt, but disappointment.
And she's saying, "You're so much better than this. You're worth so much more than this."
But I also wonder, as a mom, was there any form of guilt at all? Like, what could I have done?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and like she was so taken back by it because she thought like, "Oh, you've worked hard to be in LA, and you're having progress. Like, you're not struggling to pay your bills. Like, you have friends. You're living in a nice home. Like, you have an agent. You got stuff like down the pipeline.
You're going in the right direction.
Yeah, like I'm not crushing it, but I'm doing okay." And then again, this is 2014, very different world. So when my mainstream agent finds out that I've done that, I get a phone call, and normally we'd get a phone call to come into the agency. It's a good thing. It's like, "Hey, we're going to evaluate a project. Like, would you be interested in doing this?" It's generally a job offer. Not this time. It's like, "Hey, we think a lot of you, but our organization can't be associated with this. And now that this is associated with your likeness, we can't represent you anymore. Like, we think a lot of you, but wish you the best."
Which is probably not something that you even thought ahead in
No.
advance about. Like,
Absolutely not. I thought that I was going to do that, and I was going to get a check, and it was like it never happened.
Well, then that probably then did that lead to, well, now that door's closed, so this is the
Not
only one
only
that's open.
that door,
Yeah.
like in my mind, that was plan. The NBA was plan A.
Right.
Once I realized that you can't just shoot threes, you got to play defense. I'm like, okay, that was out the window. But like Molly and acting, like that was plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G for me. Like there was no other plan. So in my mind, once I couldn't do the only thing that I wanted to do, that was the only thing I could do. And it's like as I'm at the fork in the road, I'm 22 years old. I'm college educated. I've got a good head on my shoulders. I've got a good network of things. I could have done something else. So to say that this was the only thing that I could do was untrue. Like I had money in my savings. Like I wasn't like
Yeah. So what was the thought process at that point then, Joshua?
To
Like you've done the first one, all these things happened, you got let go from your agent. Now you're like, what's the next thing you thought in your mind? How did you process that?
I mean, just kind of who I am. It's like, if that's the only option, I'm going to double down, and I'm going to become the most successful person there's ever been in that industry. I'm going to network. I'm going to, I'm going to write. I'm going to produce. I'm going to win awards. I'm going to make money. I'm going to do all the stuff, and I did.
Yeah.
But at a great cost. But very quickly I started working. I was doing around 20 films a month. I understood networking. I understood relationships. Got an LLC. Did all the stuff. And it was like, okay. It was the reason that I was incredibly successful in that industry is because I was an extraordinarily normal person in a very abnormal industry. Like for me, it's like I understood the value of relationships. I understood the value of having relationships with directors, with production companies.
Yeah.
And that's why I was so successful. So I did all those things and, start to make a lot of money and start to get invited to, I'm sitting in VIP at bars that I wanted to get into in Vegas, and now I'm being paid to sit in the VIP section, and I'm traveling all over the world. I'm doing all this stuff, and it's like even though I'm doing like signings and I'm doing all this stuff, but it's like
You're getting a lot of attention.
and then if I'm honest, I wasn't proud of what I did. Like if anyone asked what I did, I was like, yeah, I still say the same thing. I was like, I'm acting, acting and modeling, acting and modeling. I wouldn't say,
You're an adult.
I'm an adult film star.
Right.
I wouldn't say that because that didn't bring that brought a level of shame. So I did that for over 6 years, and in my head again I thought, man, once I eclipse like $1 million earned like in a year, like that would be like something
Made it.
about. Like something
Yeah.
about that, like extra comma, would like solidify something like in my heart and mind, and for some reason it would make the feeling of worthlessness go away. And when I made the money and it didn't change the way I felt, I was like, man, well, that's weird. And then I doubled down on being successful within the industry, and I got nominated for Performer of the Year 4 years in a row and didn't win. And then in 2012, I won. Won the award. It's like you're the guy, you're the best. The industry and the people in the industry voted. You're the best. And seeing the award and seeing my name on the award, when it didn't make me feel like I thought it would, the anxiety that already existed amplified, the depression that already existed deepened, and I was like, man, if this won't fix me, nothing will.
And Joshua, let's talk about, because in the book you talk about how if we're not standing, guard at the door to our mind, and
sure.
we're getting, whatever you want to call it, the devil, the darkness, whatever is trying to penetrate.
Yeah.
And we go into this in the film The Ravine, our true story, and Danny in The Ravine played or Leslie Uggams, who played Joanna in the film, talked about how that darkness seeped into the crevices of Danny's mind.
Yeah.
And over time, that kind of overtook him.
Yeah.
And obviously, it was somewhat driving the choices he was making.
Yeah.
Because of unworthiness, a lot of the things that you talk about,
Yeah.
The guilt, the shame from his past. We're not saying it justified what he did, obviously, but it did. This is a real thing. I mean, that's why we depicted it this way. And you talked about that. This kind of happened to you in a sense. And so, can you talk about that? I mean, what is your advice to people, especially young men, that they're very conflicted because they want something. They want what the world says we should have, right? Money, fame, allure, all these things, notoriety. But subconsciously, they know that their actions, whatever they're engaged in, are probably wrong.
Yeah.
But they have that inner voice, that little chatter that's going on all the time. It's not, talk about that, because I think it's a real thing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, neurologically, or from a counseling standpoint, it would be called cognitive dissonance, right? Where there's two contradicting truths.
There's a guy that works at the health food
Yeah.
store and he goes out and smokes a cigarette at a break, right?
Yeah. Which is another topic of conversation, or just.
Yeah.
But so I love the parallel of what happened with big tobacco and what could happen with porn. But yeah, I mean, to the person that you're living a contradictory life, I would just really challenge you where, man, we have to talk to ourselves more than we listen to ourselves. And what I mean by that is more often than not, like following your heart and, your feelings are going to lead you to destruction. It's good to inform your heart and inform your feelings with a truth that's bigger than you. But if I'm subjective to my feelings, even if I have a foundation, if I'm doing whatever feels good or whatever the world's telling me is good for me, more often than not, I'm going to find myself living a very contradictory life, and you end up living a less than life. And I get the opportunity to speak to a lot of like NFL teams and professional athletes, and I'll ask them, I'm like, hey, do you want access to all the capacity that you have as an individual? Like, do you want everything, squeezing the lemon, right? Do you want every bit of juice that is inside of you so that you can express it to the world? Like, do you want to be the best, player you can be? Do you want to be the best father you can be? Do you want to be the best leader that you can be? Whatever you're pursuing in your field, do you want to give it your absolute best? And do you want to thrive and flourish in your life? If the answer is yes, if you're living your life in a contradictory way, you will never reach that capacity, because you are putting a barrier in between who you are and who you were created to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's this
The plan God has for you.
Yeah, it's literally an integrity gap.
Right.
It's like what's in between you and the person that you could be. My decisions.
Yeah.
But you would also, in the book, challenge the reader to ask themselves, what's the biggest lie that you're telling yourself?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
It starts with getting honest with yourself.
Yeah, because we can only be as free as we're willing to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it's so important. Like for me, as a speaker, it's like, man, there's a group of people I have around me that, when I do a talk on stage, it's never the first time I gave the talk. I've been recorded or I've done it in front of someone and I've asked for constructive criticism. Why? Well, I want to be as good as I could be, but also like I need to have, constructive criticism. I need feedback because I can only see myself in one light. So in the same way, like, as when I was younger, like to be a good shooter, like, how was my foot placement? Like how, did I have any of the palm on my ball? Like where am I shooting the ball like, with my fingertips? Like how are my elbows? Like where's my shoulders? Like am I square? All these things. And then, when I'm doing monologues, it's like I'm asking for feedback. How's my diction? How's my body placement? Like how do you feel when you hear me do that? But I say all that to say is like, man, you need someone speaking into your life that can see you differently than you see yourself.
Yeah.
Because you are, you're going to have a biased, viewpoint of yourself. So to thrive as an individual, you need constructive criticism. But the truth is, like, if I am not truthful with you, you can only help me to a certain degree.
But the reality of that, and I appreciate you saying that, but the reality of it is that most people don't want the feedback. They don't want the constructive criticism.
Yeah, well, because I don't want to change.
Yeah.
Because I end up calling compromise comfort. And if it's comfortable, then I don't want to change because I'm going to lose something. And if I lose something, it's going to cost me something. And I would say to that person, like more often, like take pornography for example. Like pornography, more often than not, is just a byproduct of a deeper problem. Like the porn's not the problem.
And what do you think the
Band-Aid.
deeper problem really is?
I mean, there's some level of identity crisis where there was someone I didn't have, there was something that was done to me, or there was something that I've done that I haven't processed out loud with someone, and shame is lording over my life.
So there's this void, and we're trying to fill it with, in this case, porn.
It's either a void or a wound.
Yeah.
And I'm mitigating the deficit that I have with a feeling that porn gives me, because porn will never reject me. Porn will always show up. Porn will always make me feel good.
Right.
And if I can feel good, I'll never hurt in that bad way.
So you're at the mountaintop here. You've got the top male actor, but then again, like so many other things in life, we climb a ladder, we get to the top, and we're not, we don't have the fulfillment that we think we're going to have.
Yeah,
a lot of times it was.
And I think a lot of it came, in, like a lot of the trauma that came with that was, I said yes to some things where I was sexually abused in a situation, and I thought, okay, well, this is something that I deserved. I was dating someone in the industry, and in the industry, you're just friends with other actors because who's going to understand like living that life? So you're just like your
That's your
ecosystem
inner
is
circle.
one another.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm at a dinner. Mind you, growing up as a kid that. Like if there was something true about me, it was that I was my mother's son, and I love my mother with all of my heart, and I would defend her against anyone, and I would use anything to defend her if necessary. And that guys trying to talk to my mom, my mom's beautiful, so it's like guys when I'm young, like trying to talk to my mom, I'm like throwing cans of corn at them, like get away from my mom. So the jealous kid become a jealous boyfriend. And I'm in this industry where I'm sitting at a table with friends where my friend had had sex with my girlfriend that day, and I'd had sex with his girlfriend earlier that week, and we called it work. So we suppressed reality and
That had to
said,
be bizarre, though. I mean, just, it's
well,
like-
because you're saying out loud
Yeah.
that I'm in a monogamous relationship and I'm calling sex with other people because there's a camera and a check.
Yeah.
Like I invalidate reality.
Yeah.
So but the
that
cost
was your
of
job, right? It wasn't.
yeah,
That's
but
how
it
you
was
ration. Yeah.
because like for what
Yeah.
but what the price to pay to that, where like if I could have sex in front of 10,000 people, no problem, not uncomfortable whatsoever. But if someone looked me in the eye and shake my hand, I would have a tear come from my eye because that was real. Because like like sex had become so arbitrary and just it was just something I did.
But go back, so you're at the scene at the table, because
Yeah.
it just seems crazy in my mind. But was it easier to accept as well that, your friend had sex with your girlfriend and vice versa, and it was okay? And I know you were suppressing, but it was also okay to accept the idea because there really was no connection. And it was easier to say, this is just work.
I wanted to believe that, but I didn't. Because I wanted to be okay with it, but if I'm honest, I wasn't.
I mean, it'd be hard not.
Well, because I would say like
Not
this is
to.
why people get trapped in that industry for so long. Because if you don't say you love it, like there's, footage somewhere of me, 10, 12 years ago saying, I love my job. This is the greatest thing ever. What other option do I have? I'm going to be a walking hypocrite and saying what I'm doing is disgusting and I hate my life? Because you actually do. You do hate yourself. You do think you're disgusting. But you have to say out loud something different to get yourself to believe enough so that you can function on a day-to-day basis. Because at night, when you lay your head down on the pillow, are you proud of who you are? Do you want to be doing something different? Absolutely, but you believe just as much that you can't. So the only choice is for me to tell my mind to shut up. And I say out loud, not only does it not bother me, it's great that she's, doing all this stuff. I hope that she has a great career. And I was dating someone that was doing very well in that industry. So people were asking about it. So for me, as the kid who I'm actually like, what I really wanted to say is no one look at her. Get away from her. Don't you dare look at her. Don't touch her. I'm saying I don't mind if other people have sex with her. So like the duality of that in my mind literally was poison.
Kind of drive you insane after a while because it's creating chaos in your mind.
Yeah.
You don't have clarity.
Yeah, I mean, then for me, it's
you
like...
don't have order. I think the Bible says the first thing, above all, have order in your mind, right?
Yeah, I had disorder.
Yeah,
and I
disorder.
think, and because the only thing that I had was disorder, I thought dysfunction was my only future. And I thought, okay, I've tried my best to disconnect, and I don't feel like I can. And I've earned as much as I thought would mitigate the wounds that I have, and death seemed like the only option for me. And then I started making a plan to take my life, and I had, a very specific plan to do that. And I remember I was coming back from filming something in Atlanta, and I landed at LAX, And I was like, okay, today's the day. And then I had a check for that day. And on the memo of the check, directors would write, being antagonistic, they would write like extraordinarily grotesque things on the memo, knowing that that check would have to go from your hand to another person. And normally the way I avoided that was, ATM, Dropbox, like anything other than handing it to a teller. But on this day, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted her to look at me and agree with me so that I could harm myself, because I needed someone to agree with me. I needed her to look at me and say, you're as disgusting as you feel, you're gross, like whatever. For me, I was looking for, man, if I just handed her the check and she just like shake her head.
But this teller that you met, that's what was so captivating in your book.
Yeah.
It was almost like she was an angel waiting for you.
I think she was certainly an angel.
Yeah.
If she wasn't an angel, she was most certainly, it was Holy Spirit driven.
Used as one,
Oh, absolutely.
for sure.
Because, I have this interaction with her, I slide her the check, and she, doesn't blink. And when she doesn't react the way that I want her to, I'm already like freaking out, and I got tears streaming from my face. I'm shaking, like visibly not okay. And then if I'm honest, like just social interactions that were not sex or like in the lane of that business, I found to be very awkward. And I was just like, what am I going to do? And then she comes around. Yeah, she had slid the receipt to me. She comes around the side of the teller and puts her hand on my shoulder, and she says, "Joshua, are you okay? Joshua, how can I help you?" And what I believe the Holy Spirit knew, but she certainly didn't know, was that I hadn't heard my real name in over a year.
That really resonated with me in your book when it was just like how often we hear our names. But you kind of disconnected from that because you were actually this fictitious person for so many years.
Well, and then I allowed it, where like, my barber started calling me that. People at the gym, like I would get introduced as that, and then people would call me that, like, at work.
Yeah,
Then all of a
it became who you were.
And it just
It was
became-
your identity was
Like
tied
it
to
became who I was, and Joshua died.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna pause right here, and now we're gonna talk about the turning point when we come back. Okay. Can't wait to hear it. Again, this is Joshua Broome for Bob and Kelly on Time for Forgiveness. We'll see you for episode 3. If you missed episode 1, go back and check that out. Also, we want to mention our Forgiveness Summit again coming up on May 30th and 31st in Kansas City. Go to our website at timeforforgiveness.org. You can join us either virtually or in person for this transformational weekend. You're not going to want to miss it. And we'll see you soon on the next episode of Time for Forgiveness.